Both Tao and Zen are essentially the path of the mystic warrior. Both are paths which blend the martial traditions of the ancient world with the deepest spirituality. So, in the modern age, you'd have a Bruce Lee personifying that. The deepest values of Taoism from Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching and the deepest values of Zenism, which is ultimately a flowering of Gautam Buddha's teachings manifested through the persona of Bodhidharma on to China, from China to South Korea, from South Korea to Japan. So these are like twin rivers. You can almost say they are like the Ganges and the Yamuna of India, or the Euphrates and Tigris of the Middle East. Twin rivers, but each has their own color, each has their own personality. Taoism is, of course, far more ancient. Taoism is ascribed to Lao Tzu, but essentially it is not about Lao Tzu himself. He negates himself as a personality in the annals of history. Very little is known about him compared to the way we know about somebody like Gautam Buddha, from whom Zen Buddhism evolved. Lao Tzu is one of those who chose to say very little in his life, but in saying very little, he said much. And that quality also echoes in Zen Buddhism. It doesn't say very much at all. All it says is, do jhana, do zazen, be relaxed, be restful within that absolute nothingness from which all of existence evolves and into which all of existence dissolves. That is its essential teaching. So Taoism is about energy. It's about transforming the highest energy into a loving energy. So a complete unification of all the energies that we have within ourselves. You simply channelize them towards a restful state, a peaceful state, a loving state, a relaxed state. And out of that comes great power. Out of this complete annihilation of aggression towards the world, out of this complete annihilation of fear or guilt or any such emotion, comes about true courage, comes about the true path of the warrior. Because only the warrior who is free from fear is free to be able to express himself to the highest capacity, is free to be able to express himself in a natural, spontaneous way, much like Krishna is instructing Arjuna to express himself on the field of battle in Kurukshetra. So both Taoism and Zenism eventually trace their lineage to the land of India. Because India is the land where Vedanta taught the path of the mystic warrior. And it was a path which was taught to the princes, which was taught to the ruling classes, but at the same time, it held the highest spiritual lessons, which eventually culminated in the Bhagavad Gita, in the sermon which Sri Krishna gives to Arjun, the ultimate warrior. The path of the mystic warrior is the same, whether it's in Taoism or Zenism or in Vedanta. It is essentially about being in an inner harmony with yourself. So that is the first rule. The great warrior is in a tremendous inner harmony of being. And an inner harmony of being means what? It means a complete harmony of mind, body, and soul. What you think, that you enact. What you enact is a spontaneous expression of your consciousness. So it forms a complete circle. That is the circle of Taoism. That is the yin and the yang circle of Taoism. A completeness, yet a nothingness. And that is also the completeness of the Zen circle, the Enso. It implies a completeness, but it also implies a complete nothingness, because at the ultimate level, nothing can be told about truth. It can only be felt as a vibe. It can only be felt as a great vibration within our beings, a flow of energy within our beings. And that ultimately is the lesson of both Taoism and Zenism. It seeks to create a harmonious energy within ourselves. So, Taoism, you'll find, is really about the chi, the vital energy. Vedanta is about the prana. It is about, again, the vital energy, just said in a different way. But the roots are the same. Now, this vital energy is what? It is your real nature, the real self, the suprememost self residing within you. And Taoism says that that self is not known through conditioning. Rather, conditioning, be it educational, societal, parental, gives us a wrong idea of who we are. And that's why we cannot become identified. We cannot become one with our greatest energy. Our greatest energy is away from us. And as long as it is away from us, we are never able to act with the highest quality of the mystic warrior. The whole aim of the mystic warrior is to find his intrinsic energy, is to light the lamp of wisdom within, and through that light to see that which he really is. And seeing that he is the nature of pure consciousness, he attains to an inner balance. So the mystic warrior is one who can see that beyond the fluctuations of thought, beyond the fluctuations of feeling, is this space of pure consciousness that he essentially is. That is his pure nature. And when you come to that understanding, you automatically attain to an inner balance. Then thoughts don't disturb you, emotions don't disturb you. And on the battlefield, it is that warrior who is undisturbed by emotion, undisturbed by anxious thoughts, who is completely balanced, who is going into the war as if it doesn't matter whether he live or die. And that is the ultimate victory of the mystic warrior. The physical death or the physical life is not as important as coming face to face with one's highest reality, one's highest energy, one's highest consciousness. That is the space of soul. That is the space of true courage. And when you are in touch with your soul, you come to your truest courage. There is nothing to fear. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is constantly telling Arjuna, he says, you see, understand yourself as the Atman. Fire cannot burn it, the sword cannot cut it, water cannot wet it. There is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. So the hidden part of reality, the hidden part of your life energy is completely subtle. Nothing in the material sphere can harm it. And when the mystic warrior sees that nothing in the material sphere can harm him, at a spiritual level, he becomes completely free. He becomes completely fearless. He becomes completely overflowing with a great vitality, with a great energy, because there are no thoughts to worry him. There is nothing about the yesterday and the tomorrow. He is as he is in the moment, blissful even on the field of battle, filled with a vibe of true courage, true bravery. And then there is nothing to be worried of at all. Then he is not existing in the ego. You see, in India in the Mahabharata, what is the difference between a Duryodhana on one side and an Arjuna on one side? The Duryodhana, the leader of the Kauravas, is actually full of ego. And where there is ego, there cannot be true courage, true dynamic action. There cannot be action with wisdom. And if you look at the Pandav side, of which Arjun is the foremost warrior, you'll see that after the Bhagavad Gita, he leaves his ego aside, he leaves his worries aside. He comes to a situation where he's fighting from a state of being an instrument of a larger reality. He becomes an instrument of that larger energy which Krishna represents. And ultimately, he allows that energy of the Supreme to possess him, to act through him, and thereby he becomes the most dynamic warrior on the battlefield. He attains to the highest pinnacle of warriorhood. He comes to an inner centering of being. So this is the other principle of the mystic warrior. The mystic warrior is centered in their being. They are possessed by the Supreme. They lose their own sense of identity. And when you lose your own sense of identity, you're ready to take on anything. You become larger, your expansion of consciousness happens. Something within you becomes very simple. You leave behind your idea of possessions. You leave behind your idea of living and dying. And when you do that, then you come to that situation which Lao Tzu calls the Tao. The ultimate nature, self-nature of life. And through that, you are able to attain to your inner treasure. Through that, you are able to attain to an enjoyment of whatever you do. It doesn't matter if you're fighting an opponent who's more powerful than you. You're still able to move with a very high energy around yourself. And when you do that, your expression is complete. That itself is the meditativeness. So the mystic warrior fights as if he is in a meditative state. It doesn't matter. No power on earth can stop that meditativeness. No power on earth can stop that awareness. Everybody has to live or die. But the mystic warrior of Taoism and the mystic warrior of Zen realize that the whole universe is theirs. It's not just this body which is theirs. This body is in fact not theirs. Their greater home is the greater reality, the reality of the Tao. Similarly, in Zenism, you see the whole beauty of the samurai warrior tradition of Bushido is based on Zen philosophy. And what is Zen philosophy? Zen means opening up to all the dimensions of life. Zen means being completely open to all the opportunities that are available in the moment. Leaving aside thought, leaving aside the functioning of the mind. Just being pure in consciousness, as clean as a mirror. You see, the whole concept of Bushido in the samurai code is to clean the mirror of consciousness, make that pristine. Then you're able to reflect life perfectly. Then all the dullness within you disappears. All the dust which has accumulated in the form of thoughts and emotions disappears. You become cool, you become meditative, you become peaceful, you become silent. So the samurai is fighting from an inner feeling of peacefulness. That is the ideal of Bushido. That is the ideal of the spiritual code. There is no personal animosity, no personal enmity towards the enemy. The whole focus of the energy is to be flowing. The whole focus of the energy is to be flowing like water. And that is what exactly Taoism is. So you can see Taoism and Zenism reflect each other, echo each other. Taoism is the way of water. It is literally the way of water. You can watch videos of Bruce Lee. He enunciates it very well. And it's very interesting that a modern martial artist would do that. In fact, Bruce Lee is able to explain Taoism far better than a lot of Taoist commentators. Bruce says that if you put water into a cup, it takes the shape of the cup. So water is able to take the shape of that which container, that which you put it in. Hence, water has the ability to be flexible. Water is the ultimate ideal for the warrior. The warrior is not supposed to be stiff like an oak tree. A tree can snap and break. Water cannot break. You cannot cut water, you cannot break water. So be like water. When you are like water, you're able to adapt, you're able to flow, you're able to be energetic no matter what the situation or circumstance, or metaphorically the circumstance, signified by that cup, signified by that container that you are placed in. Whatever the circumstance, you're able to flow into that shape. And then you reach a situation where you're completely in a meditative state, where your awareness goes from the mundane to the superconscious, where you're able to move towards a situation where you can respond to life with a freshness of being without getting caught up in what you already know. That's the way of water. The way of water means you're not solid. You're not decided already on how you'll be, what you'll be. No. Tomorrow the cup, the shape of the cup may be different. Still you should be able to fill the shape of the cup. That is the flexibility of the warrior, which Tao demands. That is true meditativeness. Allowing the consciousness to expand in whatever dimension existence takes you tomorrow. And that is the basic requirement for true energy to flower in you, to an extent where you can lose that identification with mind. You can lose that identification with the whole absurdity of our fluctuating feelings and emotions. There is no need to flow with your fluctuating emotions and feelings all the time. Get over that. Find yourself moving past this hectic obsession with thoughts and feelings. You see, the problem in the world is most people are obsessed with thoughts and feelings so much that the whole reality beyond those is forgotten. And if we are obsessed with our thoughts and feelings, we are not really free. Our consciousness is not free to expand. And ultimately, Taoism and Zenism means expansion of consciousness. It means a melting of consciousness, moving from a situation where you are within darkness, but are able to explode with a self-luminous light into whatever situation you're placed in. In whatever situation you're placed in, you're able to move into an absolute luminosity of being through that feeling of inner quietness, inner coolness, inner meditativeness. That is the quality not only of the mystic warrior of Taoism and Zen, but also of the lay person who's getting into that meditativeness. It's not the meditation itself, it is the quality of meditativeness that illuminates the heart. So in Taoism and Zenism, it is not as important to sit in meditation as it is to be meditative through whatever you do. If you're pulling the bow as an archer, you can be meditative within that. If you're fighting with a sword, you can be meditative in that. That is the ideal of the samurai. That is the ideal also of the Taoist warrior. And that is really the basis of the great martial arts. You look at Kung Fu, you look at Aikido, the Japanese tradition of Aikido, which is relatively modern. You look at the older version, the Judo. All these come out of an understanding of energy. So in Aikido, even a smaller person can destroy a much larger opponent. How is that? It's all a play of energy. The smaller opponent can use the energy of the larger opponent to his own advantage. Instead of striking with his own strength, he uses the strength of the other's response and uses it against him. So it is the pathless path. The way of Taoism and Zenism is to understand the basis of energy itself. When you do that, putting the ego aside, it's not that hard-hitting power sort of situation. You hit with power, no. If you just believe in power hitting, you lose much of your vital energy. Within you, you need to be in a state where you're bowing down to the greater energy of the universe. And when you do that, then you move to ultimate warriorhood. It is a situation where within yourself you're completely silently awake to the functioning of consciousness, where you are in such a situation that you feel a tremendous flow of this energy within you. And through that itself comes all your power. Your power is not a pseudo power cultivated through the length of your sword, cultivated through the sharpness of your arrows. No. Your power as a mystic warrior derives from your inner state of meditativeness, from your inner state of calmness, tranquility, even joy. This inner state of freedom, being free of the idea of birth and death, fills you with an infinite ecstasy of being, an infinite fearlessness and courage. And when you do that, you become a truly ultimately both Taoism and Zenism are paths unto infinite bliss. Bliss unbounded, that is the Samam Bonam, the ultimate aim of both Taoism and Zen. You see, Zen is a far later phenomenon than Taoism, the Zen of Japan, but the roots of Zen are ever since Gautam Buddha's time himself, passed on through Mahakashyap, Rahul Bhadra and others. So you see, Zenism is deeply rooted. It is like that rare flowering which happens once in many, many years. But the roots are very deep. So when the flowering does happen, it is immensely profound. So we can see that Zenism took a while coming to its full form in Japan. But when it did, it became a great force of the entire Japanese culture. It defined an entire culture. Not only that, it has gone on to define the whole basis of simplicity in aesthetics, even in the Western world. So the very word Zen has come to mean something which is pristine, clear-cut, devoid of the unnecessary. So when a Steve Jobs says that the Apple computer aesthetic is on Zen design, he means it very literally. It does actually follow the absolute pristine aesthetic and functionality of Zen aesthetic. You can look at the iPhone, you can look at the iPad, any Apple product. So eventually Jobs was able to create the world's largest company based on the aesthetic of Zen philosophy itself. So that is the power of Zen philosophy. Ultimately, it's a rejoicing. It's a rejoicing of that which has been known to be the very essence of spirituality. It does not believe in too much ritual about spirituality at all. Rather, it says you can take any ritual and make it spiritual. So when it came to drinking tea also, in the Zen vision, the tea ceremony, the act of drinking tea itself became a ceremony which embodied the very meditativeness of Zen. So the participants in the tea ceremony essentially are to be in such a state of consciousness and awareness that each move of theirs is deliberate. Each sense of theirs is awakened to what is going on in the tea ceremony. The sounds, the smells, the vibe itself. That is Zen, bringing the whole vibe of the experience and understanding its essence. The act of drinking tea is only the last portion of it. That is almost an excuse for the entire meditative process, which has been the preparation of the tea, the sitting, the waiting, and so on. Hence, the very attitude of Zen is finding contentment in that which is rather than what is to come. So it is not the action of wanting to drink the tea which is important. It is not the desire to drink tea which is important. It is the feeling of contentment, sitting and enjoying that waiting, that patient waiting for the tea itself, which has the real meaning. In that way, It washes us clean of expectation. It washes us clean of wanting to achieve results as such. And it comes very close to the Taoist aesthetic. And also harkens back to what Krishna is telling Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. That don't worry about the results. The results will come by itself. Just concentrate on the moment. Do what is right in the moment. Find awareness and consciousness in the moment. And then all things will go aright. Nothing will go wrong. Hence, it is the state of consciousness that matters. That creates enlightenment. That creates bliss. And you see, this message has percolated into all paths. You look at the path of Sufism, you look at the path of the Bauls, you look at the path of Jainism, they're all filled with this absolute delight within the moment. Find ecstasy, find the higher within the moment. Let the music of the infinite be played through whatever it is you are doing, whether large or small, that doesn't matter at all. And in a way, Jesus Christ himself personified this core aesthetic of Taoism and Zenism, this very heart of Buddhism, which is about surrendering to the larger and being just an instrument of whatever the larger decides. So in that way, the crucifixion of Christ becomes a symbol for his infinite patience, his infinite ability to create a miracle through the very ordinary ability to not do any miracles as such, but by his very example, by his example of being able to bear up of all that is being inflicted upon him, by his example of being able to be forgiving even in the midst of all the atrocities that are being done upon him, in his ability to pray for others even whilst they have been inimical and aggressive towards him. That is the whole beauty of Jesus of Nazareth. That is the whole beauty of martyrs in all religions. You can look at Sufism, you can look at Sikhism. You see, it is the ability of the Sikh warrior on the battlefield to fight with a state of being which has no animosity towards the enemy. That is the whole basis of Gobind Singh's warrior code also. It has a great beauty. It makes us inwardly light. It makes us inwardly luminous. It helps us drop all the manipulation, drop all the conditioning from inside. And that allows us to move into a situation where we become part of the larger circle of life, where our energy becomes virtuous. The same energy can be utilized for good and bad. It is just the consciousness you imbue your energy with which matters. And that is the very basis of both Taoism and Zenism. Hence, we can see that Zen really is a situation which is about non-dissipation of energy. Non-dissipation of energy comes about as a result of not desiring results. So when it comes to the martial arts in Zen, you can look at archery, you can look at judo, you can look at the samurais, you can look at the ninjas also. It is not about just victory, no. It is about being in a situation where you are at one with the essential emptiness of nature. You are utterly empty. You are utterly devoid of any feeling or any thought about what will happen to you, your body, and so on. And so doing, you take the wings to fly into a higher consciousness. You move into a higher space of courage. And in that space of emptiness, you start rejoicing even in the midst of battle. You start feeling that ultimately nothing can harm you. Ultimately, victory and defeat are part of the same coin, the head and the tail of the same phenomenon. So that way, The being of the warrior becomes settled. The being of the warrior stops thinking about what will happen. Rather, the warrior is at one with the beauty of existence itself, is at one with the wind, the sun, the trees, the blowing breeze. That is the meditativeness of the warrior. Come what may, the warrior is prepared for death. So in the samurai tradition, the warrior is contemplating death, but not with an attitude of morbidity, of futility. No. This warrior is contemplating death without being afraid at all. The warrior brings a new meaning towards understanding of death. And in that is the whole beauty of life. In that is the whole meaningfulness of life. It is the quality of awareness which matters in both Taoism and Zen. Remember that this warrior code of Taoism and Zenism is not restricted to them. It is not just an Asian warrior code, no. The Knights Templar of Europe also represent this nobility of warriorhood, fighting for a cause, fighting it as if they are part and parcel of a greater working of the infinite, as if they are surrendered to a greater cause, and thereby fighting fearlessly and finding contentment. So essentially, it is not about inflicting violence upon others, but about knowing oneself to be a part of the immensity of existence. Now, the problem is that sometimes violence can be justified through this. But the whole point is not that. You see, the knights of King Arthur are supposed to be following a warrior code of nobility. It is essentially about nobility in warriorhood, and this is a common refrain all over the world. So you can look at the warriors in the North American tribes. It is about nobility. Similarly, you can look at the Scandinavian ideal of Thor, the god of thunder. He is a warrior who fights with a great deal of nobility. So too, the gods in the different pantheons of the world. It's like Achilles in Homer's Iliad. Achilles is given the choice of whether to be a great warrior and live a very short life, or to live a life of relative a life which is not so famous, but to live it for a very long time. And Achilles says it's better to live and die with honor in a short life than to live a long life without the miraculous moments of nobility and warriorhood. So he chooses a short but powerful life. Similarly, you can find the strain of this within the warriors of India. For example, Karna. Karna is a very good ideal of warriorhood in India. He knows he is going to lose the battle by fighting on the side of the Kauravas against Arjun and others. But nonetheless, he fights on their side because Duryodhana has been kind to him, and he feels it a debt and obligation of friendship to fight on his friend's side. He is also told by Sri Krishna that he is the eldest of the Pandavas, and therefore if he switches sides and fights on the Pandava side, he will become the king by virtue of his being the eldest Pandava. But nonetheless, he chooses to fight for the Kauravas because he does not compromise on the principle of friendship. So again, we find a very great ideal of warriorhood. Again, in the Indian martial heroes, you'll find people like Sri Ram, who represent a very high ideal of warriorhood, whose very fight and battle is not one of personal vendetta, but fighting on the side of justice. So even after Sri Ram defeats the demon king Ravana, he ensures that his younger brother Lakshman does not in any way disrespect Ravana, but rather goes out and seeks his advice. Now, it's very interesting that in ancient India, the ideal of warriorhood was such that after dusk, after the sun has gone down and the armies have ceased to fight, the different warring camps, you could visit each other in a spirit of conviviality, in a spirit of friendship. So there was nothing about personal vengeance and personal vendetta. It is only with the rising of the sun and the call of the bugles that the war again began. So fighting was done in a state of nobility, and that is the path of Tao. That is the path of Zen. Else it's no point, it's better not to be a warrior. Warriorhood is to transform yourself. It means going beyond that which is the knowledge and skill of warriorhood and entering the unfamiliar, this wonder of a greater existence where the sky is not the limit, where life and death are not the limit, where you are able to transcend the energy of the mind and body and move to the energy of the soul, move to the energy of the spirit. And so doing, you become innocent, young, unburdened again. So doing, you find the wonder of existence. So doing, you find the greater glory of the ultimate. So doing, you come into a oneness with the infinity of being. That is the true guts which the warrior is supposed to have. A real coward is one who does not have the ability to meet the higher truth. A real person of courage in the Taoist and Zenist tradition is that person who's willing to encounter the unknown, willing to encounter the higher truths of being. That is true warriorhood in the ultimate sense. That is the ideal not only of the Zen warrior, but also of the Taoist warrior. That is being divinely and fully aware of the greater energy which creates all patterns of existence, which creates the very fabric of existence itself. And so doing, identifying with it, becoming one with this infinity of existence, you become part of its very light, become part of its very being. The outer victory or defeat is not so important for the warrior of Zen, neither is it for the warrior of Taoism. That has its own practical functionality within the world. Winning and losing have their own meaning, but the inner beauty, the inner victory is more important. Ultimately, that creates the extraordinariness of consciousness, and creation of extraordinariness in consciousness is the only true prayer. It is the only true victory in battle. It implies a complete thankfulness to life. It implies a maximization of our ability to live and work in a manner which brings us closest to the possibility of the divine. All our distinctions of living and dying, defeat and victory dissolve when our energy is at its maximum, when our energy is evolving and moving with a great harmony of being. Ultimately, harmony is the way of Tao. That is its ultimate virtue. That is its ultimate value. And harmony is the way of Zen. You can see it in a Zen garden, for example. Everything looks to be completely harmonious. You can look at it in any of the Zen arts. You can look at it in Zen archery, calligraphy, or anything like that. It's about creating an outward harmony, an outward geometry of being, and an inward harmony, an inward geometry of being. Else, there is no point. Even in the midst of this universal chaos, create this harmonious peace. That is the temple of being which you can create within yourself. That is the temple you can create within the very marrow of your being. And that is ultimately what Taoism means. Drop all the burdens of outward ritual and so on. Know yourself to be full of inner delight, inner light, inner bliss. Gautam Buddha used to say, Apo Deepo Bhava. That is, in a way, the highest ideal of Zen. Create that light within yourself. And in a way, it is also the ideal of Taoist Buddhism. Only at the outer level of being does Taoism differ from Zenism. At its ultimate peak, both Lao Tzu and Buddha represent the same principle. That principle of harmony, that principle of silence, that principle of eloquence, which is non-verbal, that eloquence of moving as part of a cosmic symphony, and so doing, you come into a complete harmonization, a complete rhythm with all that exists. And that is taken to be the highest value in both Taoism and Zenism. It is not what you achieve in the outer world as such, as much as it is about enjoying and celebrating your innate energy. And when you do that, outward success is bound to be a byproduct. If you utilize your inner energy in a vibrant way, then there are more and more possibilities that will come to a very successful fruition in the material world also. Hence, Taoism and Zenism are at their ultimate very practical philosophies. They surpass mind, they go to being, and that is the ultimate value.